Protest movements came to the region today.
Yes, first protesters against corporate capitalism. They set up camp in Nottingham city centre.
And then a success, the famous Jarrow March of 1936 arrived in Leicester, and that's happening right now. So let's cross over to our reporter Helen Astle, who's in the city centre now. Helen, what more can you tell us?
Well, good evening to you, Quentin. Around 50 protesters have gathered here tonight. As you say, around 20 have come from Jarrow near Newcastle, almost 200 miles away. They're here to protest against the cuts. They're here to protest against youth unemployment. And they're not the only protesters who've been out in force in the East Midlands today. Over in Nottingham, around 20 campaigners took to the centre of the city onto the Market Square to set up camp there. Occupy Nottingham are demonstrating against social and economic inequalities around the world. It follows gatherings at London's Stock Exchange, and organisers say they'll stay there as long as it takes.
We can make a difference. Just by being here, we're making a difference. We're planting a seed of thought. We're encouraging discussion about subjects that people might not have discussed together before, and we're waking people up to the reality of what's going on.
Well, joining me now is Becky Heaney. Becky, as a nation, we're in debt. The government's got to pay it back. What's your solution to it?
Well, we think that the people who caused the crisis to begin with, like the bankers and rich speculators that have gambled away public money, should be the ones paying for it. It wasn't young people or public sector workers that caused the economic crisis, so we shouldn't be the ones that are suffering for it.
But every family up and down the country, young and old, are suffering, aren't they?
They are, and that is a result of the cutbacks that the government are making. The people in the government, like Cameron and Clegg, their families aren't suffering. They're still able to send their children to private schools, to university. It's ordinary people and working class people who are suffering, whose EMA are being cut so they can't go to college anymore, whose tuition fees are being risen so they can't go to university, who are unable to find a job. It's us that are being made to suffer, not the people at the top who caused the mess to begin with.
I think the government would argue, though, it's not their mess, it's Labour's mess.
Well, I would probably agree with that as well. We lived under a Labour government for 13 years that brought in tuition fees to begin with. We had youth unemployment whilst Labour were in power, and Ed Miliband and the rest of the Labour Party are, saying that, well, they're going to offer us £6,000 tuition fees and not reversing any of the cutbacks. So we've got three parties in this country that all say the same thing, and there's no alternative being presented for young people.
OK, well, also here tonight is Tony Church from Leicestershire against the cuts. Tony, what are you hoping to achieve by sort of jumping on this bandwagon, if you like?
Well, we're not jumping on the bandwagon. It's part of an overall movement. Leicestershire against the cuts will cooperate with the Jarrow March to cooperate with trade unions for November the 30th. We're seeing a big build-up of protests now against the plans of this government to make working people pay for a crisis that they didn't create. And this is just part of it. We've seen the Occupy movement. We'll see a general strike of public sector workers on November the 30th, and this is just one part of it tonight with the Jarrow March.
Thank you very much for joining me this evening. Well, the Jarrow marches will be here in Leicester for the next couple of days. They then set sail to London, where they're hoping to arrive on the 5th of November.
OK, Helen, we'll leave it there. Thank you. We have plenty more on its way in the programme tonight.
Yes.